Most marketers waste time digging through scattered feeds, half-read newsletters, and endless bookmarks just to find good enough stories for their newsletters. But what if I had an AI-powered playbook that captures ideas, organizes them automatically, and writes your newsletter so you always press publish? In this video, I'll show you exactly how that system works, from the database to the curation of relevant news and the drafting of your newsletter, so you can go from chaos to consistently publishing your newsletter without burning out. And if that sounds a little bit too complex, we have a portion at the very end that simplifies this whole system into one single automation. So you can skip ahead to that if you want to. But if you are new to the channel, my name is Matt Paiva. I build AI solutions for businesses, especially on the sales and marketing side of things. And why don't we start this video off with a demo of how this system works in the backend. When it comes to using the system on a day-to-day, there are 3 automations that are pulling information and relevant news into our system. This first one relies on an RSS feed. The second one relies on other newsletters. And the third one relies on a news website. So throughout the day, these 3 automations will be running in the background and they'll be capturing relevant news to import into this database over here. Now, this database includes all the information that you might need for your newsletters, including the date that that piece of news was published, the headline, the summary, and everything else. And let's say that you liked this piece of news over here, number 142, that talks about how EU is dealing with the legality of shared order blocks. So what you would do in this scenario, you would click over here and rate it a score between 0 stars and 5 stars. When you rate this 5 stars, actually 4 stars or more, this moves on to our second grid view. Now, our second view is filtering for all of the news that were published either today or yesterday and have a score of over 3 stars. Now, let me just remove one of these filters just to show you exactly what this looks like. You will see that previously we had a few other pieces of news that made it to this grid. And these are going to come down to be the news stories that you want to talk about in your specific newsletter for that given day. Now, when you selected the news that you want to talk about, you now need to write your newsletter. And that's why we have this automation over here. And once this automation runs, it will read the information that is in the database and it will create 2 different drafts to be stored in a Google Drive folder, which looks kind of like this. And then from here on out, you can either A/B test these 2 drafts, or you can just pick the one that you like best and send it right away. And as you guys can see, these drafts are written exactly as you would want in your specific use case, with the headers that you want, with the hyperlinks for the original links. And as you guys can see, these 2 drafts follow an exact format because this is something that we built for an actual newsletter that exists. So when you're actually building this out for yourself and pretty much adapting these templates, you're just going to need to change some of the prompts to adapt some of these header portions, to include these hyperlinks or not, and to keep this relevant to your business. But if this entire system sounds like a bit too much, don't worry. We're going to merge this automation over here with this automation over here to make sure that we have relevant newsletters in one simplified automation. The only downside of simplifying the system is that now you don't get to choose what pieces of news you get to talk about in your newsletter. You only do that when you're editing your newsletter itself. So just skip ahead to that part of the video. And if you want help figuring out the exact AI opportunities that your business can leverage right now, go ahead and book a call with me down below, because I am giving away 3 AI audits for free. And in these AI audits, you get 3 things: an AI use case portfolio that is personalized and prioritize for your business, a 6-month implementation roadmap, and an MVP of an automation completely for free for you. This is actually like the biggest free thing that I've ever given. So just go ahead and take advantage of that and book a call with the first link in the description below. All right, guys. So why don't we start off with the database portion of our system? As you guys can see on the screen, I have the database set up and it's actually receiving a lot of news pieces every day because this system was built for a daily newsletter. But if you're starting from scratch, you can just go over to Airtable or whatever database you like to use. Click over here on add or import, or just like add a new table over here for my scenario. And here I'm going to start from scratch, call it table 2. And in table 2, we'll see that we have a bunch of these things set up automatically, these fields. I'm going to go ahead and delete all of them. I guess I have to delete from the second one forward. We're going to delete these 5 fields. And what are the fields that you actually need in this automation? First one, I like to always have an ID field, and this is an auto number field. So that's what we're going to have set up over here. An auto number just automatically generates a new number in each cell. And this is just good practices whenever you have databases in place. The second one will be the date published, and it's actually going to be a date field. And here it will be, I'm going to call this date published. And here you just need to pick out the date format that you want and just make sure that this option over here, the default option, is turned off, because this is what we're going to be pulling in from the metadata of each one of the news. So for our next couple of columns, we're going to need information from the actual news itself. So here I'm going to include a short line text, and this will be our headline. Then I'm going to include a summary. And for the summary, I'm going to be using a long text. So here's going to be our summary. Then we're going to need a URL field, which is just going to be the link to the piece of news that we're referencing. After, I'm going to include a score, which is a rating, and I'm going to keep the 5-star one. Then we're going to include 2 single select options over here, and this will be the topic. Oh, I accidentally selected the single line text. This is supposed to be single select here. And this will be the topic of your newsletter. So here we can be talking about like regulation of cryptocurrencies and things related to the crypto market. We can talk about events. We can talk about new product releases. And here is where you think through the types of topics that you would like to keep in your newsletter and just add them to this topic session. And last but not least, we're going to have another single select, which is going to be a source column. And then in the source, we're going to include all of the sources of information that we can pull. So here in our scenario, it can be the CoinDesk scrape, it can be an RSS feed, and it can also be like newsletters or maybe a manual input. Now we click on create field. So now we have a bunch of different columns that are going to do each specific thing. And whenever we are adding new pieces of information over here, we can just use this database to store everything that we want. Now here on out, we want to create the second grid view. And here we're going to click on create a new, and this can be grid view as well. We're going to call it grid 2. And here, the most important part is actually to include some filters. And in these filters, we're going to use one condition where the rating itself is higher. And here we're going to include higher than like 3 stars. If you only want to use ratings that are over 4 stars or 2 stars, you can pick whatever rating you want over here. And then the other one that I included was a condition group to only talk about news pieces that either have the date published as today or yesterday. And how you do that is just you select over here, you go to date publish, and then date publish is, we can click over here on today, and here we just add another condition by clicking on this plus sign over here, add a condition, or date published is, and then here we just select to not tomorrow, sorry, yesterday. And then this is the structure that you're gonna need. As you guys can see, there's nothing here because our database is empty. But if we go over to the other database that has a bunch of news added over there, this is kind of what it's going to look like later down the line. Okay, so now that you have your database set up, let's start setting up the automations that bring in the information to this database. The first one is going to be an RSS feed. And to build our RSS feeds, just go to Google Alerts and just type in Google Alerts. And then once you go to Google Alerts, you shouldn't have anything here in My Alerts. I actually just use these alerts as RSS feeds for the automations that I have in the background. But before I get too carried away with the RSS feeds and the Google Alerts, let me explain what an RSS feed is. RSS stands for Really Simple Syndicate. And what it does is it actually receives information from websites based on a specific term, since we're using Google Alerts over here, and it allows us to access that website content without having to manually go and visit that website. And as you guys can imagine, this is really useful for an automation context because here we can just create a new alert, and here we can just set up whatever type of keyword that we want. In this scenario, we can include crypto regulation, for example. And once we type crypto regulation, we will see the types of contents that are added to an RSS feed like this. Now, let's say that you read through these pieces of news and they do look like something you want to be talking about in your newsletter. You can just go ahead and create that alert. But before you click on this create your alert, click on show options. And here you're going to change from your email to the RSS feed. Now you can also change a couple other things from automatic to news when it comes to sources. So you're only receiving news. If your newsletter is specific to a specific country or a specific market, you can adapt this to whatever country you're in. I can choose Canada, for example, because I'm in Canada. And here you can select how many results you want in your newsletter. I'm going to keep only the best results instead of all results. Then once you click on create alert, you just need to click on this button over here and copy this link. As you guys can see, this will pop up and you're not supposed to understand this. This is going to be designed for computers to understand and for our automation to understand. As we can see over here, it's empty as of right now, but slowly but surely information will be added to our RSS feed. So once you set up your RSS feed, you need to set up this automation over here, which by the way, you can get completely for free, and you will actually receive it as a JSON object, which is going to be something like this. So what would happen when you open up your make.com is that you open up your make.com, you click on create a new scenario, and then you click on the three dots down here and you click on import the blueprint after you download it from my, folder with all of the other templates that I have in there. So you're going to click on conference RSS blueprint, which is the name of that file specifically. I might change the name of the file, but you'll for sure be able to find it in the folder. Click on save, and this will load up over here. Now, once this loads, you're going to have to connect your accounts to some specific modules over here. For example, the ChatGPT modules over here and the Airtable one, you'll need to connect your account and connect the specific database that you're using. And you're also going to need to update your RSS feed. So here, what you need to do is you need to select this link, delete it, actually delete the whole thing, go back to your Google Alerts and click on the thing again and copy the Google Alerts that you want. Then you're going to go back and paste it over here. Click on save. And here you can select all the RSS feed items, or from now on, however often you want this to run. Click on save. Here we are going to explain exactly what each one of these modules is doing in the background. So we have the first text parser module, which takes one of these inputs, which is a Google link, and every link is going to start with www.google.com-URL, and removing this part over here to just keep the actual URL of the piece of news that we're looking at. So this one, for example, is from the Globe and Mail. Yeah, that's the website that we're looking at. So that's what it's doing. It's just turning this link into this link, so we avoid this Google link over here. Now that's important because our next part is actually using that information to look at that website and grab the contents of that website. And the output that we're going to get is the HTML code for that website. Now from here on out, we're going to look at that HTML code and we're going to look for some specific tags. And here we're going to look for specifically a publish tag. So for the first one, there wasn't any. Second one, there wasn't any. Let me see if for any of these there were. There we go. So here we can see that this last one was published on the 2nd of July at 9:45 a.m. on a specific time zone. Now, the key thing with this step is that it's looking for the meta tags that are related to the published date of that specific article. This is one of the ways that we can do to make sure that all the information coming in through our RSS feed is up to date. This step is really important if you're publishing newsletters daily, because this ensures that the news were actually published on that date by looking at that meta tag. Now, if you don't mind talking about pieces of news that were published on previous days, you can go ahead and delete this module by right-clicking on the module and clicking on delete. And actually, you'll need to delete these two modules over here. Now, here we have a filter as well. That's just making sure that there is an output coming out of this. As you guys can see on the first all the way to the fourth one, they didn't have any published dates, and this is actually quite common. Well, in terms of numbers, no, because this is kind of like only 20% of the articles here in this example had the published date. From my experience, kind of half of them have a published date. So what you can expect is, if you are really keen on only talking about pieces of news that are related to that specific date that you're writing your newsletter for, you can expect to bring in 20 news from your RSS feed and only have 10 be added at the end of the day in your Airtable. And then last but not least, we are using a text parser module over here to transform the HTML to text. So once our HTML to text module works, it will transform the entire HTML code in that website into text, so we can input it into ChatGPT in a readable format for our AI. And here we're going to filter and summarize this step. And what does that mean? It means that we're reading the content of this website, running it through a specific criteria, which is the criteria of the news that we talk about in the newsletter. And we're figuring out two things. One, is this piece of news relevant for our newsletter? And then two, if so, what is the summary of that piece of news? And then we're going to use a JSON parser to pretty much deal with each one of those two things separately. We have a filter that takes the relevance score, which is either a yes or a no, from this output and only moves on if it's yes, meaning that we're now only dealing with the pieces of news that are relevant for our newsletter. And then this next ChatGPT step over here is just designed to select the actual topic that we're talking about. So here we can be talking about new products, regulations, events, or the main topic for the day. Then you just need to map out all of those pieces of information into Airtable over here. And as you guys can see, we have each one of these elements mapped out over here: the date published, the headline, the summary, the URL, the topic, and the source. We are automatically keeping it to RSS feed because that's what this automation talks about. Now, a quick note before I forget, this is kind of like just an interesting fact, is that this Toronto time over here is actually coming from this module over here that takes whatever output is coming in like this, and this is kind of like a universal time zone format, and transforming it into Toronto time. It's only transforming it into Toronto time because of this note over here that the time zone is set to Toronto. So if I want to receive an accurate published time in my database, I needed to transform this into Toronto time. But that's pretty much it when it comes to the RSS feed into the database. So let's move on to scraping a specific website, which is this scenario over here. And when it comes to scraping a specific website, here we're using CoinDesk. So what you need to do is also click on create a new automation or create a new scenario and import this blueprint by adding this information over here. Like I said before, you're going to need to connect your ChatGPT steps over here and your Airtable step at the very end right there. And the one thing that you need to change is the link from this website over here to the website that you want to scrape. Now, what is the criteria that we're looking for when it comes to these links? We're looking for a website that's kind of like a news website in your field. So CoinDesk looks like this, for example. It has all of these pieces of information, including like the Bitcoin price over here and all of these cool features at the top. It has some headlines, and more importantly, it has this part over here called latest crypto news. And it has all the pieces of information, or at least a handful, actually more than a handful. There's probably like 10 to 20 news that were published from 7 hours ago all the way to 36 minutes ago about the crypto market. Now, why is this latest crypto news section important for us? Because we're going to use this as the source of information for our news that we're importing to the database. Now, this concept over here of the latest crypto news should apply to other websites like Morning Brew, for example, that has the latest portion, or even digital marketing dive over here that has these top stories that you can just take these pieces of information as what we're going to be looking for our scrape. Now, keep this in mind that some websites are going to have some CAPTCHA, some sort of CAPTCHA that will verify that you're a human. Morning Brew, for example, if I go back and I click on Morning Brew, it actually didn't show this time, but the first time I logged in, it appeared verifying that you're a human. That could cause issues when it comes to using that information in the automation. So just keep that in mind whenever you're setting this up. With that being said, you're going to adapt this link over here to the link that you are using. All of the rest of the pieces of information stay the same. Now here, what's happening in the background? Let me actually format this. First, we're using the HTML to text portion, just like in the RSS feed, by taking all of the HTML content from this and having it in a specific text format. Then we're using an OpenAI step, which is designed to look for this specific portion over here. It's just asking us, find me the latest crypto news portion of this website and isolate the headline of that piece of news and also the link for that piece of news. So here I actually ran an example to show you guys how the information flows in this scenario. So as you guys can see, the first couple of modules, like I said, are just scraping the website and turning that into plain text. And then the output that we have from OpenAI gets thrown into this JSON parser. And now we have a header, which is just the headline portion of that piece of news and the link to that piece of news. So here, for example, this headline says Bitcoin rebounds towards 110,000, presaging what could be a volatile July, and then the link for that piece of news over here. Now, from here on out, each one of the pieces of news that we scraped from CoinDesk, not Morning Brew, is going to be dealt as a specific bundle. And as you guys can see, we have 8 bundles over here. First, we're going to make a request and do the same process that we did from this first one. So we're scraping that specific website or that specific piece of news. This is just like us opening this over here and clicking on one of these ones, maybe like this one over here, and then scraping this page over here. And the difference between what we're doing here and what we did then is that we're scraping this specific page and not scraping the CoinDesk home page. So we scrape that information, turn the HTML into plain text, and then we run the same filter summarize step over here. And as we can see, out of the 8 bundles that we had, one of them was deemed to be not relevant, which was bundle number 4. Out of curiosity, let me just take a look at what bundle number 4 was. So this one is this piece of news over here. Our GPT step read this and it says that it's not something that would be relevant for our newsletter. And here it depends. If you have a newsletter that is much more niche and talks about more specific topics, you will have less things going through this filter over here. Obviously, guys, just remember to adapt these prompts to your specific criteria as well. So out of the 7 that were deemed relevant, we run the other GPT step, which is the same topic selection step. And then we add all of those pieces of information into our Airtable database. So if we go back to the grid view and we scroll all the way down, we will see that all of those were added over here. And like you just saw right now, all of those being added actually. So here, let's say that we really want to talk about this Bitcoin rebounds to 110,000 piece of news. We can click on it and rate it a 10. And that means that it will appear on our grid 2 view. And obviously, like, we would need to go back and add the filter again that I removed when doing the demo, but you guys get the gist of it. So when it comes to actually drafting our newsletter, we have this automation over here that's going to write this newsletter in 2 different approaches. The first approach is going to use a perplexity research module, while the other one is going to use the approach that we've been using for the past couple of times of just scraping each website and then parsing that information into ChatGPT. Both of them are using Claude to write the information, and we're using the same Google folder to store these 2 pieces of information. So that's kind of like the gist of this automation. But first things first, we actually have a Airtable search records module as a trigger. And what this Airtable search records module is looking at is the curation table over here on the grid 2, which is this table over here that includes all of the favorite pieces of news for the days either today or yesterday that we want to include in our newsletter. So in this scenario, we have these 6 pieces of news that we want to be talked about in our newsletter, ranging from a variety of different topics, from regulation to new products and events. So if I run this once for the sake of the example, you will see the automation running for each one of the pieces of news back here. And I'll actually break it down as soon as it's finished running. So as you guys can see, our automation is running in the background and it grabs all of the pieces of information that we have in our Airtable field. It goes through Perplexity or through the HTTP make a request, the scraping portion, and it creates and aggregates all of those pieces of information to write the newsletter using Claude. Now, once that newsletter is written using Claude, it will be saved as a Google Doc, and the same process will happen down here. The key difference is that we are using, for the top one, we are using Perplexity to do the research, and the other one, we are actually scraping each one of the links to do the research. And if we go over to our newsletter project, we will see that we have each folder for each month over here, and obviously a couple different tests that I was running in the background. And when we open this over here, we are going to open the July 2nd, which is today's date. And once we click, we will see that we have a Perplexity draft and a ChatGPT draft, which we can open right away. And as you guys can see, the Perplexity draft is done over here. It has the hyperlinks that we are looking for. And if we compare this to the GPT draft, we will see a few different changes. For example, if we look over here in the new product updates on the block, we see that the Solana launches first US crypto and the Deutsche Bank launches German regulated euro are both under new product updates, while the Perplexity approach included the Deutsche Bank release under the rules of the game, which is a regulations portion of this newsletter. So obviously, slightly different approaches talking about the same pieces of news. The first one has quite a bit more of hyperlinks, as you guys can see as well. So here, like I said in the demonstration, you can A/B test this information when you are running your newsletter, or you can just make some edits and choose the one you like best to send this out. But since I promised you guys I would do a simple version of this entire system, I'm going to use the CoinDesk scrape to do this version. So we have first the information coming in from CoinDesk and being added to Airtable. And what we're going to do is that we're going to import all of this drafting information to our CoinDesk scrape portion. So here we're going to paste everything and we're going to move everything over here, trying not to ruin how it's set up. And the key point over here is that we can remove this Airtable step over here, and all of the pieces of information will now be connected. And that's pretty much how we are going to connect everything into one system. Now, obviously, we need to make a couple changes. We need to go into Perplexity AI and change the headline from this headline to the other one that we already have in the system. So here we're going to change this header to this header, and that's going to be a save on our portion. Here in the HTTP request, we're going to replace this URL with the URL from below, which is going to be this link over here. And then here in our Claude models, what we need to do is to set up this as well, to just change the text from that to this other thing. That text was coming in from the text aggregator. Now it's coming in from the correct portion. Let me just scroll everything down. Okay, it looks like it's saved accurately. And I'm actually going to save the whole thing because why not? And we're going to run this once. And after a couple minutes, this automation is finishing to run. And you can see that the key difference is that instead of storing everything in the database and actually handpicking what pieces of news we're going to talk about, we're pulling the information straight from CoinDesk. And that information, we're just relying on this GPT filter and summary step to determine which one of the headlines actually will make it to the final one. So this would be a fully automated version of our system. And as you guys can see, we already wrote the first version of the newsletter over here. I can just click on the web view link and I'll actually open it in a new tab. And there we go. We have a fully automated system that reads all of the CoinDesk's latest news and then includes the relevant ones in here into your newsletter. And as you guys can see, this is actually pretty high quality from the quick read that I'm having over here. It includes the hyperlinks. It includes the pieces of information that you might want, the June 24th, 2025, the name of the newsletter, the headlines, even follow the person who is writing the newsletter on Instagram or Telegram in this scenario and everywhere else. So, you can set this up for your business in a pretty straightforward way. Now, obviously, the key downside to this system is that now you don't have a database to work off of. You're just using the entire piece of information that you're bringing in from CoinDesk over here. So you don't have that luxury, quote unquote, luxury of filtering what types of news you want to talk about in your newsletter. You're just kind of relying on whatever is in this portion of CoinDesk's website whenever you do the scrape. Now, a good thing to note is that this could be a little bit simpler since we just imported the other automation that drafts the content into this one. We could have, for example, removed these two modules over here and then just used these two modules as the scraping portion. So that's kind of like a duplicate take. And there are ways of making this automation leaner, but as of right now, this is kind of what you can implement right away in your business. Just remember to, connect your accounts, adapt these prompts to your specific use cases, and then go and build this for yourself. So there you go. Now you have the only AI newsletter playbook that you'll ever need. Obviously, there are ways that you can enhance this playbook by adding nuances to it. And there are obviously ways that you can simplify this playbook. And in fact, if you want to simplify this even further, you might lose a little bit of detail, but there is a video that I made with a much simpler automation that's only about 6 modules long. And you can go watch that video over here. And if you are interested in learning about the AI opportunities for your business specifically, like I said before, I am running free AI audits every single month where you get a full personalized AI use case portfolio for your business, a 6 months implementation roadmap, and an MVP of an automation for yourself as well. So if you are interested in that, just book a call with me down below. Otherwise, just go watch that video over there, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.